when I was 14, covered in pimples with a little squeaky high voice.
The voice is hard to make.
But Riches and Rags is a good blues. Straight blues. So, I've always loved blues, and it was what I began as. Before I discovered British traditional music, I was singing American folk music, and then I gave it up for a long time because I wronged. Hello, Peter. Want to kill the house lights? Thank you, good man. Hey, got a bit of sexy atmosphere. Hey, thank you. Most kind. Thank you very much. I'm going to begin this song again with a traditional song, but this time from Ireland. This is a song called The Dark-Eyed Sailor. I've recorded it. I learned it from the singing of a guy called Al O'Donnell from Dublin. And I thought I had discovered a rare song that no one else knew, and then I found out it's already been recorded by Christy Moore, and everyone thinks it's not a Christy Moore song. It's Al O'Donnell from Dublin was the original singer of this. Although the song itself, you will find it in the tradition both of Scotland and England as well as Ireland. And it tells the story of a sailor, a dark-eyed sailor, no less. And he returns to his village after being gone a long, long time. This is in the days of the sailing ships. And when he returns, he doesn't look anything. He's a much older man than the young man who went away. And he is worried that his true love will have forgotten him and she'll be off with somebody else. So he wants to test to see if she still loves him, so he puts on a disguise. He puts on clothes so that she won't recognize him, and walks up to her and asks her for a date. And she says, "Oh no, I couldn't possibly go out with anybody else because my boyfriend is a sailor and he's been gone for 7 years, but one day he will return, so I'm waiting for him." He said, "Oh, you're crazy, you should come out with me, we'll have some fun." And she said, no, I don't want to have fun. I am waiting for my sailor, my true love." And at that point he removes the disguise and says, "It's me." So the song, understandably, was very popular with sailors. The Dark-Eyed Sailor. One evening fair, it being the summertime to take the air, I spied a sailor and a lady gay, and I stood to listen, and I stood to listen to hear what they might say. He said, "Fair maiden, why do you roam? The day is spent and the night is on." She heaved a sigh and the tears did roll for my dark-eyed sailor, for my dark-eyed sailor, so young and stout and bold. It's a long year since he left this land, a ring he took from off his lily white hand. One half of the ring is still here with me, but the other's rolling, but the other's rolling at the bottom of the sea. surely find love turns aside and soon cold does grow, like a winter's morning, like a winter's morning, the hills all white with snow. She said, I will never forsake my dear, although we're parted this many's a year. Genteel he was and no rake like you, to induce a maiden, to induce a maiden to slide the jacket blue. One half of the ring did young William show. She ran distracted in grief and woe, saying, William, William, I have gold in store for my dark-eyed sailor, for my dark-eyed sailor has proved my overthrow. And there is a cottage by yonder lea, this couple's married and does agree. So maids, be loyal when your love's at sea, for a cloudy morning, for a cloudy morning brings in a sunny day. I forgot to mention, but you would have probably noticed in the song, not only has she waited for 7 years for him, but the whole time he's been away she's been saving money, and she's got a big box of money that she gives to him as well. So the sailors really like that whole idea. This is a song of mine written in Australia and recorded with Roaring Jack in its original form. I've never done it until now as a solo song. It's a song about an old man that I saw in Sydney, in Martin Place, which is right in the centre of the city of Sydney, in the business area. And he was wearing very poor clothes, and he was playing the harmonica, mouth organ, with his hat on the pavement for coins. And people were walking past him, and no one was paying any attention to him. And a bit later on in the day, I saw the same old man in a different part of the city, down by Central Railway Station. And he was looking through the rubbish bins, looking to see what he could find in the rubbish. And he was a wonderful harmonica player, but that was not really the point. The fact is that, you know, all his life, probably, I don't know him, but I guess he probably used to have a job and he paid his taxes and would expect that at the end of his life that he should have some respect and some dignity from the society that he's contributed to, and instead he is forced to look in the rubbish bin for his food. So I wrote this song about that. It's called Playing for the Traffic. It's an example of the sort of stuff I did with Roaring Jack. It's very punk. Forgive the sweary words in it, they're all part of punk folk. You could have seen them any day up the back of Martin Place, in a battered Sunday suit, not seen for better days, blowing on the mouth harp with a kind of wit and grace, to bring a smell to the face of a broken cloth. There was not a match of courtesy, old bugger didn't know, from Monachilly's doorstep to the banks of the Ohio. The typists and the tellers didn't want to bloody know, dealing with the doors of future shop. He was playing for the traffic and the 9 to 5ers, to Olivia Brown for what he made. And he gave her to the swirl and all the penny patient bastards that turned around and looked the other way.
stood a while to listen. He played the thing with ease, but the crowd that day was tighter than a pot of wine and cheese. Maybe they were hard up, or just plain hard to please, but no one put a single cent his way. So I reached into my pocket to even up the score, and dropped a pile of change into the tin plate on the floor. When you walk the streets, they treat you like a whore, and no one ought to ever feel that way. He was paying for the traffic and the 9 to 5ers, toodaloo, bound for Botany Bay. And he gave more to this world than all the penny pension bastards that turned around and looked the other way. He was paying when I left him, with a new crowd to convince. I often look out for him, but he's not been back there since. Did anybody notice? Does anybody wince at some old digger picking through the trash? In this land of milk and honey, where there's more than enough for all, why did he spend his whole life with his back against the wall? Did he fight in 2 world wars, to wind up with sweet sod all, walking on the street for a bit of stash? He was paying for the traffic and the 9 to 5ers, toodaloo, you're bound for Botany Bay. And he gave more to this world than all the penny pension bastards that turned around and looked the other way. He was paying for the traffic and the 9 to 5ers, toodaloo, you're bound for Botany Bay. And he gave more to this world than all the penny pension bastards that turned around and looked the other way.
This song was written for Roaring Jack, but never actually recorded with them. Well, it was in an acoustic form on an album called Dance of the Underpass, but I used to do it with the Jacks. I had taken a lot of speed amphetamine back in my wild and reckless youth. I used to like to take drugs. I don't take anything these days. I don't even drink tea and coffee. It's sad, isn't it? Like a bloody monk. But I'd had a head full of amphetamine and desperately needed alcohol to take the edge off it, because I was jangled, as we say. The only place at 5 o'clock in the morning where you can still buy alcohol in Sydney is at King's Cross. I lived in the west side of Sydney in Newtown, so it's a long walk, but if you've got enough amphetamine you can do it in a very short time. I wrote this song after making a rather chemically enhanced journey from Newtown to King's Cross in search of alcohol. The song's called Suicide Town. Seagulls are wailing and haggling over takeaway scraps on the main drag of dawn. Some black-eyed old Susan walks up and asks me if I'd like to get off or get on. I've been up for so long, I don't think that I'll ever come down. All this life's just a bruise on the surface of Suicide Town.
pseudo thugs are kicking some drunk in the brains, armed to the teeth with the wild animal logic of the terminally insane. They knock off at 6, then they're in at the Anchor and Crown, where the old fellas toss the new morning in Suicide Town, singing, "Where have you gone, Mrs. Brown's lovely daughter? Gone from the meat market down to the abattoir. So many had her and nobody caught her, and one day she floated away. And where are you now, Mrs. Brown's lovely daughter? I drowned in the ocean, the God's holy water. All the wee lambs, they were led to the slaughter, and then they just floated away." Then she floated away. Circle around like sharks in the rain. No one looks at them directly, we watch their reflection in shop window panes. Give them a gun and a badge they can wear like a frown, and they'll make sure it's business as usual in Suicide Town. The ambulance off to the cemetery, dropping off more of the victims of chemistry. Nobody knew they were there. Down at the cavalry rank we all stand in line in the alfresco casualty ward. There's no conversation, there's only the small talk. Mostly it's wild and absurd. Oh, wish I was home, I can't sleep but I'd love to lie down and watch the amphetamine replay of Suicide Town. And the seagulls are wheeling and haggling over takeaway scraps on the main drag at dawn. Lovely playing songs for you guys, you're really nice ones, thank you. This song was written by a wonderful songwriter from Memphis called Will Shade. Will was the lead singer, principal songwriter and front person for a great band from the 1920s called the Memphis Jug Band. Jug band music arose at the same time as the explosion of early jazz in the cities. In the rural areas primarily, jug band music was for a lot of the folk who lived out in the country areas. They were very poor people, they were sharecroppers, they were like peasants. They had very little money and they couldn't afford often to buy the expensive brass instruments required to play jazz, but they had the music in them, so they improvised. They went out into the farmyard and had a look in the barn to see what they could find, and came out with things like a wash tub, you know, for putting water into to wash the clothes. Wash tub. Turn it upside down, put a hole in it, and put a bit of rope in the hole with a knot, and up to a broom handle, and you got a bass. And then they would take a comb for the hair, and they would get
tissue paper, wrap the tissue paper around it, and it becomes like a trumpet. They call it a kazoo in its more refined form, but the original was just a combed paper. Spoons you can bang together, or if you're really sophisticated, you get the washboard for the clothes. You put thimbles on your fingers. You get a drum kit. And with all this improvisation, they were able to make music, and it became known as jug band music. The jug was, of course, a jug that you blow into, and it makes the sound of a tuba. So they could form a whole jazz band using only farmyard and kitchen utensils, augmented with guitars and banjos and harmonicas, of course. So I think of this as the kind of original punk music, the DIY ethic, do it yourself. Will Shade wrote this song and recorded it with the Memphis Jug Band in 1927. It's called Stealing Back to My Same Old Used to Be. Stealing in the sense of quietly creeping, not in the sense of taking what is not yours. Two meanings for the same word. You can either, if you're stealing, you're either taking something that's not yours, or if you're quietly creeping, you're also stealing. So stealing back to my same old used to be.
Put your arms around me like a sucker around the sun. You know I love you, babe. When your easy writing's done, you don't believe I love you. Look what a fool I've been. You don't believe I'm sinking. Look what a hole I'm in. I'm stealing, stealing, pretty mama, don't you tell me. 'Cause I'm stealing back to my same old used to be. Got a woman about my age and size. She's a married woman, but she treats me right. She don't believe I love her. Look what a fool I've been. She don't believe I'm sinking. Look what a hole I'm in. I'm stealing, stealing, pretty mama, don't you tell me. 'Cause I'm stealing back to my same old used to be. About my age and size, she's a married woman, but she treats me right. She don't believe I love her. Look at a fool I've been. She don't believe I'm sinking. Look what a hole I'm in. I'm stealing, stealing, pretty mama, don't you tell me. 'Cause I'm stealing back to my same old used to be. Put your arms around me like a circle around the sun. You know I love you, babe. When your easy riding's done, you don't believe I love you. Look what a fool I've been. You don't believe I'm sinking. Look what a hole I'm in. I'm stealing, stealing, pretty mama, don't you tell me. 'Cause I'm stealing back to my same old used to. Stealing back to my same old used to. Stealing back to my same old used to be.
I seem to be playing a lot of old Roaring Jack songs tonight. That's because I've just come back from Australia, and when I go there it's compulsory because that's where the band was, and a lot of the old fans come out of the woodwork when I go back there, and they expect to hear the songs I used to do with the Jack song. They're the songs that I've been playing a lot of, and I'm also in the process of putting a new band together, and we're going to do some of the old Roaring Jack songs. So I'm revising them again. And one of the things we always tried to do was to kind of mix up different styles of music, unlikely styles of music. So Irish folk music with rockabilly, Celtabilly. We've even had a go on an album called The Cat Among the Pigeons at Scottish Blues. This is it. It's a song, basically a cops and robbers story, piece of fiction really, although it's the sort of thing that happens all the time. A song called The Day the Boys Came Down to Blow Him Away. They came down the back street, the dicks and the flat feet, with dogs that had nose to stings back at Long Bay. They had a warrant, he was abhorrent, the day that the boys came down to blow him away. The neighbours were snoring, but too busy scoring. Time for the boys in blue to show crime doesn't pay. They know what they're there for, what they get their four square for. The day that the boys came down to blow him away. And he was no fool, one of the old school. He just broke the golden rule, topping a water was right out of order. The day that the boys came down to blow him away. He's in bed with his missus, he gets up and pisses. Find some things up, he twigs right away. Just a flash of a torch out there on the back porch. The day that the boys came down to blow him away. He would never take chances round a woman he fancies. So he writes a note to say every dog has its day. Then he walks down the back stairs with his hands in the air. The day that the boys came down to blow him away. And he was no fool, what of the old school. He just broke the golden rule, and the first bullet slit him, for he knew what had hit him. The day that the boys came down to blow him away. The day that the boys came down to blow him away. The day that the boys came down to blow him away. It's guitar retuning time. This time I'm not going into Dadgad, I'm going into Daddy-ab. You go first of all to Dadgad, then you take the E one, all the way, the G string all the way down to E. You take the top string all the way down to B. You think I'm joking, don't you? And that's Daddy-ab. And the joy of Daddy-ab is you can make the guitar sound like a set of bagpipes. Which is very handy because I'm going to sing some Scottish music. Songs though that I wrote myself about events that took place in the city of Glasgow during the years of the First World War. Came to be known as Red Clydeside, massive anti-war movement. Many people think that the anti-war movement of the 1960s was the kind of origins of that, but in actual fact the biggest anti-war movement of the 20th century took place in the years of the First World War, in this country, in Ireland, in Scotland where I'm from, and in Russia, and in many parts of the German and the British Empire as well, in the colonial regions. Folk were in revolt against the carnage and slaughter that was taking place because they rightly realised that this had nothing to do with ordinary people. This was the ruling class of Britain versus the ruling class of Germany, and they were fighting over wealth and power and property, and yet ordinary people like ourselves were forced, or our great-grandparents were forced to go and fight in a war that really had nothing to do with any of us. And the opposition to that, we can think it took many forms. In Ireland, the great political leader James Connolly, he said, England's moment of crisis is Ireland's opportunity. So the anti-war movement of that time took the form of a resistance that expressed itself as a bid for Irish freedom. And in 1916 they occupied the post office in Dublin. And the end result of it all, after much more conflict and the execution of most of the people who occupied the post office, including James Connolly, was that at least was the setting up of the Irish Republic. That was in 1916, the Easter Rising. Then in 1917, the people of Russia, led by Lenin, rose up and overthrew the the Tsar, I beg your pardon, and pulled the Russian working class out of the trenches and got them back home where they should have been all along, and put an end to Russia's involvement in that ridiculous war. Then in 1918, it began in the city of Kiel, up in the north of Germany. The German workers rose up, led by the revolutionary sailors in Kiel, but it spread to the rest of Germany, and the Tsar, the Kaiser, get all these names mixed up, the Kaiser was forced to flee to Holland, and the German working class were out of the war. Great victory, well done you. And then in 1919, Red Clydeside, the anti-war movement in Britain, centred in the city of Glasgow, was crushed by an invasion of the military. Troops and tanks were sent into Glasgow. The city was surrounded, and Red Clydeside was crushed. But even after the end of that particular phase, like the leader of Red Clydeside, John Maclean, could say in 1920, we can turn Glasgow into a Petrograd, a revolutionary storm centre, second to none. So it was a very interesting anti-war movement. This is first of a series of songs I'm going to play. From the album Red Clydeside. The song is a tribute to the men and women of Glasgow who fought alongside John McLean in the days of Red Clydeside to make his vision of turning Glasgow into a revolutionary song centre, to make that vision a reality. Called the Red Clydesiders. Jimmy Maxton, James McDowell, Barbara Gallagher and McShane, Agnes Stowe and Helen Crawford, up at the heat great John McLean. These are some of the Red Clydesiders, hundreds more that push to name, a monument and raised forever. These are the flower of Scotland's fame. Dougal fell apart in prison, came back with a broken shell. He lived the same to young John Muir, 8 blind months in the jaws of hell. His only crime was saying no to slaughter in the rich man's war. Property is theft, he said, don't die for what you can't live for. Tax and tax for common folk, some for money lenders. The old judge pew, the white and blue, the kilt and the young pretender. He was sweet, but what makes him fear is our pride in the Red Clydesiders. Every Sunday night at Barnsley, John McLean roared out his spiel. Thousands gathered round to hear him. He spoke loud and he spoke well. 15 years I've been a soldier, fighting for the cause, he said. I'll not stop now, that he might jail me. Prison walls I didn't dread. John was lifted for sedition, Muir and Gallagher, Maxton too, are the leaders o'er Red Clydeside. Trotted out for public view, while others flagged and begged for mercy. John threw caution to the wind. You stand accused, he told the judge, with the blood of millions on your hands. Rags and tax for common folk, silver money lenders. The old judge pew, the white and blue, the kilt and the young pretender. He was sweet, but what makes him fear is our pride in the Red Clydesiders. Tortured by the screws in prison, force-fed with a poisoned food, haunted shaft still not broken, up in the cart he proudly stood. That night when John came home to Glasgow, weak of body, white of hair, Red Clyde burned as bright as midday. Then the tanks rolled through the square. Workers' blood splashed on the flagstones, soldiers came with tanks and guns. Beats were broken, spirits too, the final chapter had begun. Their treachery on Bloody Friday sent a stench to Heaven's Gate. John said we'll build our own republic, fight for justice anyway. Tax and tax for common folk, silver money lenders. The old judge pew, the white and blue, the kilt and the young pretender. He was sweet, but what makes him fear is our pride in the Red Clydesiders. James McDowell, Barbara Gallagher and McShane, Agnes Stowe and Helen Crawford, hundreds more I've pushed to name. Above them all by head and shoulder stood the Dominie Pay the Shaws. John McLean, the pride of Glasgow, he gave his life for the common cause. Rags and tax for common folk, silver money lenders. The old judge pew, the white and blue, the kilt and the young pretender. He was sweet, but what makes him fear is our pride in the Red Clydesiders. I will do 3 songs from Red Clydeside in succession, just to give you a little bit of the story, because it's a fascinating one. When the war was declared, there was a division in the working class movement in all of the countries that were participating in the war. It happened here, it happened in Britain, it happened in Australia too. One section, particularly the officials of the trade union movement, said we must support our ruling class in this war. The revolutionaries said no, we must do the opposite. We must end the war by bringing about a defeat for our own side. That was the position taken by the Bolsheviks, it was the position taken by Rosa Luxemburg and Karl Liebknecht, and also the position taken by John Maclean. It came to be known as revolutionary defeatism, as opposed to social patriotism, which was the position taken by the officials of the trade union movement and most of the social democrats at the time. And the revolutionary defeatists in all those countries had to flee or else be put into prison, and that was what happened to Karl Liebknecht. He was arrested and he was jailed for treason for advocating a defeat for the German ruling class in the war. John Maclean was advocating the same thing, a defeat for the British ruling class. Lenin was calling for a defeat for the Russian ruling class. He fled to Switzerland, I think, Liebknecht was thrown into jail, and so was John Maclean. Maclean had said it's the task of socialists to build class consciousness, to convince workers not to slaughter each other for a sordid world capitalism. And that was an illegal statement at the time. He was arrested and charged with treason, put into prison. First in 1916, he was sentenced to 3 years hard labour. After a year and a half, he was released. No sooner was he back on the street than he was saying the same thing again, bring down the government and end the war. They arrested him again. In February 1918, he was put on trial for treason. And at his trial, he stood before the judge and said, I stand here not as the accused, I am the accuser. I am the accuser of capitalism, and it's dripping with blood from head to foot. And he continued in that vein for 75 minutes until eventually the gavel came down and he was sentenced to 5 years hard labour. During that time he went on hunger strike, and they put a hose up his nose into his throat to force feed him. But after only 7 months he was released. December 1918 they let him go. Liebknecht was also released around about the same time. The war was over. This is a song about John Maclean's anti-war activities, which were deemed by the ruling class to be treasonable. And the chorus to the song says, a bayonet is a weapon with a worker at either end. There's a famous statement of Maclean's, bayonet, as we say in English. A bayonet is a weapon with a working man at either end. Betray your country, serve your class. Don't sign up for war, my friend. Now, the reference to Arthur Henderson at the beginning of the song, Arthur Henderson was the leader of the trade union movement, and he was a social patriot. He didn't like John Maclean. John Maclean didn't like him. Don't sign up for war. See on Arthur Henderson, he fought for the working men. When war broke out, he pressed his suit and he ran to catch the train. He signed a deal in London, they made strikes until the fighting's done. In Glasgow town the work went through, Jack 10 to John Maclean. He said, a bayonet, that's a weapon, with the working man at either end. Betray your country, serve your class. Don't sign up for war, my friend. Don't sign up for war. When they turned them out to Langside Hall, John stood up at the fountain. What he said was tailor-made to magnify the friction. You patriots can roar and bawl, it's not but braggart's fiction. The only war worth fighting for is war against oppression. He said, a bayonet, that's a weapon, with the working man at either end.
Betray your country, serve your class. Don't sign up for war, my friend. Don't sign up for war. The police briefed him out of there and down to Queen's Park Station. They tell him plain, offend again and we'll make you rue the day, son. But Johnny didn't turn a hair, he called for a demonstration. A mighty throng, 10,000 strong, turned out against conscription. The next time that they came for him, John Kennedy meant the business. He didn't plead for mercy, he said, give me British justice. The justice that he caught for stand money into silence. When to hell the hammer fell, 3 years was his sentence. He said, a bayonet, that's a weapon, with a working man at either end. Betray your country, serve your class. Don't sign up for war, my friend. Don't sign up for war. And in a year and a half they caught it up, but Christ had taxed him sermon. He came back all before his time, but he didn't seem to care, man. Hey, all you can, I'm still the one, will cause you to beware, man. Scanner, where rubber hose forced up his nose. They kept him swab supper. Let him out or keep him in. Red Clyde was a glaster. The way they turned the government was wheeling brawly Cutha. He said, a bayonet, that's a weapon, with a working man at either end. Betray your country, serve your class. Don't sign up for war, my friend. A bayonet, that's a weapon, with a working man at either end. Betray your country, serve your class. Don't sign up for war, my friend. Don't sign up for war.
Last song from Red Clydeside, just to wind up the story. On December the 18th, December the 18th, 1918, John Maclean was released from jail and returned to Glasgow. He had been in jail just outside Aberdeen, and he returned to Glasgow by train. Word of his release spread through the city of Glasgow like wildfire, and 200,000 people were at the railway station with red flags, Rotafana, waving red flags to welcome John Maclean back to Glasgow. And they asked him to make a speech, but because of the force feeding with the tube that they had put up his nose and down into his gullet to make him eat food, he had lost his voice and he couldn't speak very much. So his speech was a very short one. This is December 1918. The war finished in November the 11th, 1918. So there's only a space of just over 1 month after the war is finished. Maclean, and it finished because of revolutionary defeatism. The German working class overthrew the Kaiser. The English did not win the war. The German working class pulled the German workers out of the war by overthrowing the Kaiser, and he fled to Holland, and the war was finished. Maclean rises to his feet, and his speech 1 month after the end of the war, he says, 3 cheers for the German working class. Long live the German social revolution. And according to witnesses at the event, the whole city of Glasgow erupted in cheering. So we did not invent internationalism in recent times. It goes back a long way, and MacLean was an internationalist. This is a song written not by me, but by a very famous Scottish writer called Hamish Henderson. He set up the School of Scottish Studies and discovered many of the traditional folk singers, which we have been fortunate enough to have recorded before they died, people like Jeannie Robertson and Davy Stewart. Hamish recorded them, tracked them down and recorded them in the 1950s. But he wrote many, many fine songs, and this is one of his finest. It's called the John MacLean March, and it's about John MacLean's return to Glasgow. And in the song he says, Lenin is his comrade, Liebknecht is his mate, his friend. Now, Liebknecht was also put into jail at the same time as MacLean for exactly the same reasons. But Lenin, when he came to power in Russia, one of the first things that was done by the Bolsheviks was to appoint John MacLean to be their representative in Britain. MacLean was in prison at the time, but he became the official representative of the workers' government in Russia, which he considered to be a great honour, of course. So anyway, the John MacLean March.
You see him as he came to Bigorgy, a warm and blowing north of the day. Yon man is coming, the hill to his town, but I sure he'll win back to Glasgow the day. The Jiners and Hudders are the marching people I bind. Come on now and hear it, give me our time to bide. Turn out, Jock and Jimmy, wave your cans and your muckle gans. Great John MacLean has come home to the Clyde. Hello, Pat Malone, I knew you'd be here, so the red and the green lad will wear side by side. Gorbals is history, Glasgow belongs to him now. Great John MacLean has come home to the Clyde. Hello, Pat Malone, I knew you'd be here, so the red and the green lad will wear side by side. Gorbals is history, Glasgow belongs to him now. Great John MacLean has come home to the Clyde. Johnny there, that's him, he's the body fighter. Lenin's his comrade and Liebknecht's his mate. Tagged him while he's sleeping, or they'll mind what he says here in Glasgow City and the whole world beside. I man the Scarlet's funny, here's to you, Hill and Shawnee. Great John MacLean has come home to the Clyde. I will when it's finished, I'm away home to Springburn. Come home to your tea, John, we'll soon have you fed. It's hard work this sleeping, I'm sure he'll be tired enough. We'll sleep on the flare mat and he John the bed. The whole city's quiet now, the Kent city's resting, and him with his Glasgow brings the fame and the pride. The red banners waving, man, Scotland has marched again. The great John MacLean has come home to the Clyde. The great John MacLean has come home to the Clyde.
I think we've all earned a well-deserved rest from left-wing politics for a wee while. Let's sing about other things. My grandfather, when I was a little boy, used to amuse me by telling me stories about two old travellers. In Scots we say travellers, called Saturday Johnny and Jimmy the Rat. Wonderful names. And we have, like here, we have the Roma and the Sindhi people in Scotland and in England too. But we also have clans of travellers, just like we have. I was singing earlier on, right at the start of the night, about the outlaw clans, the Reaver clans. Well, we also have the traveller clans. The two largest of them were the Stuarts and the Robertsons, and many of our finest traditional singers, the people that were located by Hamish Henderson, who wrote that last song, were from the travelling clans, people like Bell Stewart, Davy Stewart. In fact, the whole Stuarts of Blair Gowrie, if you're familiar with Scottish music, you would know that the finest of our traditional singers are the Stuarts. But also the Robertsons as well, one of the great travelling clans, and the greatest of all was a singer called Jeannie Robertson, and she still stands, I think, head and shoulders above all, and that's no disrespect to anybody, but she is the greatest of our traditional singers, or was until she died at a ripe old age back in the 1970s. But anyway, my granddad was a Robertson, and he knew lots of, I mean, he didn't ever live as a traveller, but he was of that clan, and he told me many stories about the travellers. One of the things he told me was that if they came to a house in a village, well, they knew that the people who lived there were soft-hearted people, and you could always, if you went up to knock on the door, they would always be the ones who would give you a hot cup of tea or some soup, maybe even a dram of whiskey on a cold day to warm you up. This house would be singled out by the travellers, and they would put a secret mark known only to other travellers. No one else could find it, but the travellers would see it straight away. They would put a mark on the doorpost or out at the front gate, so the other travellers coming into the village would see and that's the house to go to. And my granddad told me that his dad, when he was a small boy, my granddad's father, every year after Saturday Johnny and Jimmy the Rat left the village, would go out and paint the door and the gate. Because he knew the mark was probably on their door, you know, because he had a bit of a soft spot for the travellers being on that clan himself. But anyway, this song's got a chorus, and it's not too difficult to join in if you want to have a go at it. It was Saturday Johnny and Jimmy the Rat, counting the brass, that's the small coins, the saints, counting the brass that falls into the hat, where they're collecting the money for playing the music and singing the songs. So Saturday Johnny and Jimmy the Rat, counting the brass that falls into the hat. When they get a few bob, that's a few shillings, when they get a few bob, they jack in the job, they stop work, they stop the singing. When they get a few bob, they jack in the job and roll in the arms of sweet Nancy Muscat. Now you would be familiar with Nancy Whiskey, and you might know the song Nancy, Nancy, Nancy Whiskey. If you can't afford Nancy Whiskey, you might be able to afford Nancy Muscat. Next best thing. So the tune goes like this. Saturday Johnny and Jimmy the Rat, counting the brass that falls into the hat. When they get a few bob, they jack in the job and roll in the arms of sweet Nancy Muscat. For a try. Saturday Johnny and Jimmy the Rat, counting the brass that falls into the hat. When they get a few bob, they jack in the job and roll in the arms of sweet Nancy Muscat. Lovely. Please join in at the end of everywhere. Turn by the wheel like wind from the fire. God love the poor souls that are in there tonight. This
time of year you would want someplace drier. I'm sure they're not hoping that Christmas is white. They were in here today with their dirty old jogger. Who could refuse them the price of their bait? Blowing the chanter and roaring their songs when they left the old rocks bit to mark on our gate. Here we go. Saturday, Johnny and Jimmy the Rat, counting the brass that falls into the hat. When they get a few bob, they jack in the job and roll in the arms of sweet Nancy Musker. Who slipped past the dogs and tickled the wee clout, who lifted the salmon, say pleasant and far, whose eye came in bed when the keepers about. It's Saturday, Johnny and Jimmy the Rat. It's a wonder that folk didn't send for the police. They ken well enough what the old rascals did, but they call them inside for a wee Doc and Doris and turn a blind eye to the tricks that they play. Saturday, Johnny and Jimmy the Rat, counting the brass that falls into the hat. When they get a few bob, they jack in the job and roll in the arms of sweet Nancy Musker. Near the girl from the welfare was bring here on Saturday, says they'd be far better off in a hame. The old boys didn't fancy the bingo and lottery, clearing the road and the freedom train. For as long as a mind had come here from the winter, camped up at the old mill just to draw the blast. In springtime they're up at the jog and the canter, away for as long as the summer days will last. Saturday, Johnny and Jimmy the Rat, counting the brass that falls into the hat. When they get a few bob, they jack in the job and roll in the arms of sweet Nancy Musker. Learn to love the drifting rain and winter's icy blast, and only long of the Holy Isle, far out in Lamlash Bay. I walked the hills in creaking shoes where the bones of the old ones lay, and at night the head of Wallace fled on soulful old grey, and the flower of Scotland bloomed again among ruddy dogs and hay. I was taught in school how Britannia's rule was forced on the Scots alone, bought and sold by a parcel of rum and a handful of English gold, till the fig was sealed and the London field, when the blood of the clans ran down through the twisted sea of history to the streets of Glasgow town, where at night the hand of Wallace bled on solemn floral drapes, and the flower of Scotland bloomed again on ruddy dogs and waves. they fought on the dikes that ran round the housing scheme. With sticks and stones we broke our bones for the sake of the good old cause that has kept our country bound and chained under British laws. And at night the head of Wallace led on some floral graves, and the flower of Scotland bloomed again among pride dogs and waves. And the old men looked how the blood was spilt on the banks of the river Clyde. 300 years of hate and fear, much like a miser's mind. And the tide Roxanne that Parkhead took on the first day of the year. See full-grown men drag it all out again while the fans of the terraces cheer. And at night the head of Wallace led on some floral grapes, and the flower of Scotland bloomed again among Roddy dogs and babes. Oh, at night the head of Wallace led on some floral grapes, and the flower of Scotland bloomed again among Roddy dogs and
How are we going for time? It's 10 to 11. Anybody on a curfew? Do we need to start winding up, or are you happy to rock on for a bit longer? I don't want to overstay. How are you feeling? Have you got energy for maybe about 15 minutes more? Can you manage that? I got a couple of requests for songs about Australia, and it's my good mate George, who's been a loyal fan of my music ever since the Roaring Jack days, so I dare not say no. I'll do them both. They're both political songs, so blame him. He brought the politics back in, not me. I was going to give you all a break from it, but... In 1975, the government of Australia, the Social Democratic government, legally and rightfully elected by the people, was sacked by the unelected and unaccountable Queen's representative, the Governor-General of Australia. Now, Australia is not a colony of Britain, and yet somebody that the people of Australia did not vote into office had the power, it was discovered, to sack the government in the name of the British Queen, because the rulers of Australia didn't like that government. It wasn't for any other reason, they just didn't like them, so they sacked them. And they got the Queen's representative to do the job for them. That happened in 1975, November the 11th, 1975. But it didn't just happen out of the blue. For many months beforehand, it seemed as if the government was just reeling from one crisis to the next. Incidents of people's lives, for instance, one of the high-ranking members of the cabinet, his name was Jim Cairns, had been having an affair with his secretary. Now, this had nothing to do with his position in the government. And he had not made a big deal out of not having affairs. He was not like one of the kind of right-wingers who had been going on about traditional family values or anything like that, you know, I mean, and it was nobody's business. But it turns out, if you read a book by a fellow called John Pilger, I don't know whether you've heard of John Pilger, he's an investigative journalist, and he's written many fine books. One of the books he's written is called A Secret Country, and in that he analyses the role of ASIO, which is the Secret Intelligence Organisation in Australia. ASIO stands for Australian Secret Intelligence Organisation. The role that they, together with the CIA from America, had played in destabilising the Whitlam Labour government. spying on them, putting microphones into their homes to find out what they were doing and so on. This is how they found out about Jim Cairns. And so it turns out that the government was being seriously undermined for almost a year before the opposition decided to block supply for the budget. They refused to pass the budget, so the government could not get the money to run the economy because the opposition had control of the upper house. This was how it was all done. And on that basis, the Governor-General stepped in and sacked the government and handed over power to the opposition, who were the Tories, the Conservatives. And they passed the same budget that they had refused to pass for the Social Democrats. They passed exactly the same budget. They provided supply. And so the wheels began to turn again. But at the time of the sacking of the Labour government, workers came out onto the street in huge, huge numbers. And the army was actually was on what they call red alert. It was on high alert, ready to step in, because they thought there was going to be rioting in the streets over the sacking of the government by the Governor-General. But as it turns out, the deposed Prime Minister said to the workers, settle down, everybody be calm. At the next election, we'll sort it back out again. So they all went home. But of course, at the next election, by that time, the wheels were turning again. The CIA and ASIO were not investigating the new government. They were giving them and the newspapers were giving them a wonderful, easy ride. And at the next election, people voted in their thousands for the replacement government. So democracy, it was a coup. It was a very skillfully managed coup that took place in Australia. And I wrote a little song about it. This is my one. It's called The Ballad of 1975. For George. I remember the day I was no more than a boy, working in an oxide plant at the back of North Fitzroy. Bert Gilchrist told the gaffer, cause Bert Gilchrist had the clout. He said, they've given Gough the bullet and the lads are walking out. And we walked right off that job while the gaffer held the door, and watched it on the telly in a TV rental store. It was one hell of a situation, the kind you just can't gauge. There was Gough on the steps of Parliament House saying, now maintain the range. In the year of the double dissolution, drinking in the streets gave way to doubt. Australia voted in the revolution, then stood back and let the fat cats push it out. There was violence in the air as I walked back home that night. Everyone you'd meet was getting ready for the fight, saying if they're out for trouble, then trouble's what they'll get. We started out a colony, did they think we're a colony yet? In the year of the double dissolution, drinking in the streets gave way to doubt. Australia voted in the revolution, then stood back and let the fat cats push it down. But as the weeks went by, the anger turned to mild relief. Locks were freed like magic, and I watched in disbelief to see a scam so blatant, so jacked up and full of holes. But the people in their thousands endorsed it at the polls. In the year
revolution. Drinking in the streets gave way to doubt. Australia voted in a revolution, then stood back and let the fat cats push it down. Some said they had it coming, some were closer to the mark, who spoke about conspiracy, sinister and dark. But history records it, and the story will be read, how we let them take democracy and stand it on its head. In the year of the double dissolution, drinking in the streets gave way to doubt. Australia voted in a revolution, then stood back and let the fat cats push it down. Australia voted in a revolution, then stood back and let the fat cats push it down.
And if you're interested in that particular story, get a copy of A Secret Country by John Pilger. And if you get the original first edition, the hardcover version, he quotes my song, that song, in full in the book. But my publisher made a tactical blunder and made him pay royalties. And so when when the new edition came out, the second pressing, my song was removed. So, not the right thing to do, I'm afraid. It's a fascinating story. This is another fascinating story about Australia. During the years of the Depression, the Communist Party of Australia did wonderful work amongst the unemployed, and as a result, it grew massively. Australia has a marvellous left-wing history in its mere 200 years as a white settler state. It was the first English-speaking society to form a social democratic party, formed in 1891, long before a Labour Party was formed anywhere else in the English-speaking world. In America, they never formed one, but in England and Britain, it wasn't until the beginning of the 20th century that the Labour Party came into being. But in Australia, 1891, they formed a social democratic party. And it became the government in 1948 after the end of the Second World War, led by a man called Ben Chifley, and proceeded to set up a welfare state. The first welfare state in the English-speaking world was a good year before his name just went in and out of it, Attlee. Before Attlee began to set up the welfare state in the UK, Australia was a year ahead of them with the instigation of a welfare state under a Labour government, under the Social Democrats. But the Communist Party grew massively as well, and it was a mass party. Many trade unions were actually led by members of the Communist Party in Australia. And by 1949, they wanted to challenge the Labour government for the position as the party of the working class in Australia. And to do that, they led the most militant section of the workers, the mine workers, out on strike for an 8-hour day, knowing that Labour had always had this as one of the central planks of its agenda, the 8-hour day, the 40-hour working week. but they knew they would not agree to it. So the Communist Party was trying to be clever. They took them out on strike for an 8-hour day, knowing that the Social Democratic government would reject the call, which indeed they did. Went a lot further. They declared it to be a communist plot to destroy the Australian economy in its fragile condition after the Second World War, and threw the leaders of the strike into prison and launched what came to be known as the Reds Beneath the Bed campaign. In the newspapers they were saying that the communists are hiding under your bed. They called it the Reds Beneath the Bed campaign. The end result of that was that at the next election, the Conservatives won by a landslide. The Social Democrats had made everyone so afraid of the Communists that they voted for the exact opposite, because they said, because what the Tories said was, if you really worry about the Communists, don't vote for that law. The Social Democrats, they support the Communists, which was not true. They were throwing them into prison. But they said, if you really want to deal with the Communists, vote for us and we'll deal with the Communists for you. So the landslide victory for the Tories, and in 1951 they held a referendum. You have that word as well, don't you? You use that word. They held a referendum, do you want to ban the Communist Party? And in March the 9th, 1951, the vote was returned in the referendum, no. And the vote was overturned by the majority, who said no, keep the Communist Party as a legal organisation. They wanted to make it verboten. The people of Australia said no, and it's a good job they did, because it would have set democracy back a long, long way. Look at what happened in America. The Communist Party was banned there in 1950, and it launched the McCarthy witch hunts, and many, many people lost their jobs, their livelihood. And then here in 1956, I've just recently learned, the Communist Party was banned, and many, many people lost their jobs. So if Australia had gone as well, who knows what might have happened. Whatever you think of communism, we don't want a society where legitimate political expression is made illegal. So anyway, this is a song about the strike of 1949 to win the 8-hour day that resulted in the Social Democrats launching the Reds Beneath the Bed campaign and the whole shebang unfolding. God, you know a lot about Australian Labour history. No, this song's called In the Days of 49.
The Miners' Federation, they took on the big Australian magpie government law. Chiefly sent the troops, forced them by starvation to respect the right of capital, to rule by tooth and claw. They seized the miners' property, they threw the leaders into jail. They were strong in war against the Reds beneath the bed. The miners stood their ground, they would not submit to blackmail, and the cash flowed in from far and near to keep their families fed. Workers united will never be defeated. History will honour those who rally to the call, determined and resolved not to be bought out or cheated. Till bread and peace and liberty, the common right of all. Nurses and shopkeepers, they sent cash and food, wrote letters of support to help the fight. The thing that was most needed was endorsement from the Trades and Labour Council, but the cowards kept their kid gloves and the league white. Workers united will never be defeated. History will honour those who rally to the call, determined and resolved not to be bought out or cheated. Till bread and peace and liberty, the common right of all. Oh, inside the bloody same, workers always get the blame, holding up the holy wheels of progress, putting spanners in the works. All we care about is the nuts. That's the reason why this country's in a bloody mess. So live on, class, working class careerists with an eye on greener pastures, did a deal with power and capital to stem the growing tide. The lesson must be learned, it must never be forgotten, how Chifley and his government stood on the boss's side. But God's united will never be defeated. History will honor those who rally to the call, determined and resolved not to be voted or cheated. No